Okay, shall we extend a round of applause to the director, Mounia Akl, and the actor, Yumna Marwan. Hello, Mounia. Hello, Yumna.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Hi.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us this very wonderful, warm, and funny film as well. And we are very happy to have you guys with us to talk about the film. And I'm sure the audience, they will have lots of questions to ask you. So brave yourselves for that. Okay, but maybe before I just allow them to have the microphone, maybe I'll just see whether Mounia, Yumna, do you want to say a few words to the audience first?
Of course. I wanted to say that we're very happy to be connecting with you through this film, you know, like we're so far from each other, but thanks to cinema, we're able to have a relationship. And I wish that next time we would be in the same room all together. So I want to thank everyone for giving us their time. And Yumna, you know, Yumna was the actress in the short film Submarine that we worked on together. And so what we love about our collaboration is that we've been growing together for the last 7 years. And so including her in this film as the aunt, the sister of the father, was very special for both of us. I will let her say something as well.
I agree with everything Mounia said. I really wish that one day we can be there with you guys. Hopefully, maybe the next film that we make together, we will be in Hong Kong. That would be lovely.
Yes, definitely. We are looking forward to that very much as well. So maybe I'll just ask the first question. So Mounia, what inspired you in making Costa Brava, Lebanon, specifically this story? I think it was inspired by the waste crisis in Lebanon in 2015, but I think that was just a part of your source material. There might be something else that you want to elaborate with your story.
Yeah, of course, in 2016, when we worked on the short film Submarine, the waste crisis was a big, an important moment for a lot of us, and especially also people from my generation, because it was one of those environmental disasters that completely disfigured and transformed our city and our landscapes, and at the same time was very much tied to so many things that were wrong about the country, because it was a corruption crisis for it to become an environmental one. And so it almost felt like this crisis in itself represented so well what can be wrong about our country, and made us question once again our relationship to home. And for me, I think like a place like Lebanon is a place where you feel like it's a place that you love and hate with equal measures. And growing up with my family, who I was quite close to, but is also a flawed family, I felt like as a child, I always created a parallel almost between the situation at home and the situation outside, with this naive parallel. And so family was something I was always very interested in exploring. So I found in Costa Brava a way to merge the two subjects that I felt I was burning to talk about, and the interaction between the two of them.
And actually, the film also has a very contemporary connotation as well, because it actually begins with a shot of the port with the ruined port as well. So it may also be talking about what's happening now with the current crisis.
Yes, when I wrote the film with Clara, my co-writer, it was like in Submarine, the short film, it was set in a dystopian imaginary city in the future, where the city was drowning in filth, garbage, corruption, and was like a worst case scenario of what it was then. So it was a genre film where the genre was being used to look at my deepest fears, almost to try to question them. But when we started shooting the movie, and a little bit before, the collapse of Lebanon and like the financial collapse and the environmental collapse and everything that happened after the explosion made me feel like the reality of the country was worse than the dystopia I had imagined. And so I decided that the movie was going to be set in 2020. And I also feel like when I watch the movie again today, the reality of the context of the country in the movie is much nicer than the reality of Lebanese people today who are completely held hostage. And so I think that the opening shot, which had always been a shot of the statue being carried out of the port, when we were discussing with my cinematographer, and we're like, oh shit, this shot, it's supposed to be in the Beirut port, but the Beirut port is completely disfigured right now. And then this is where my cinematographer and I said, well, this is the reality. So the shot remains the same. It's just the content of it is the port has been completely destroyed, and that inherently contextualized the film as a film that happens after the August 4th explosion without having to change anything in the script.
Yeah, but how did you actually decide on concentrating on this family who actually fled Beirut in order to build some kind of a new life in the countryside? I mean, these ex-protesters, former activists who are now living in the countryside.
Sorry, what's the question?
How did you decide actually to make your film, your story, revolve around this family? I mean, these former protesters, former activists who fled Beirut and then lived on the countryside.
Because I was interested in talking about what Lebanese people do to create safe spaces when the city and their everyday landscapes don't feel safe anymore. Like for us, for example, like there are people who leave the country, and there are those who try to create bubbles of isolation, and there are those that hide in their relationship because love can be a patch also. And I think that for me, I was interested in exploring, where do we run away when the world doesn't feel safe anymore? For Yumna's character Alia, she chose the farthest place possible, Colombia. And for the father, he chose the mountains. And for Reem, she chooses her little subjective magical world. For the grandmother, it's humor, which is what she hides in. For Tala, it's her inner world. And I think, and for Suraya, it's often the past. And so I was interested in exploring our runaway points, and also because a lot of these characters realize that you can run away as much as you want, but things will come knocking back at your door because no amount of like geography change or medication can mend a heartbreak if it's not the source of the heartbreak that we face.
So Yumna, how do you actually discuss this with Mounia? I mean, how did you prepare yourself with the character of Alia, who actually fled to Colombia in order to build a new life? How did your real life feed into the character itself in terms of your reaction towards what's happening in Lebanon?
That's a perfect question because so Mounia has been talking to me about this film for years. At the time, both of us lived in Beirut. By the time we came to shoot the film, I had actually left Lebanon a year before. So it was the same case of what Mounia was just talking about running away and not wanting to try so hard to make something work that you know is only destroying you. So I had felt that living in Beirut had become too much for me, and I am lucky to have the ability to leave. So I had been out of Lebanon for a year. So I discussed with Mounia that if I'm going to come and do this role, that it was the first time in a role that I felt like I don't really have to prepare or do anything, because I would have to come back to the country after a year of not being there and have to face what it had become, because I left before the explosion. and I left at the very beginning of the financial crisis, so everything had changed. So really, this character, although she is very different from me on the outside, emotionally, I felt like we were really going through the same things. And I'm very grateful that Mounia forced me to come back to the country. To do that.
Yeah, I think the shot of actually Alia leaving again, I mean, with her suitcases, leaving her brother, it must be quite a moving experience for you, isn't it, Yumna? Because it will be like you leaving again, yourself leaving again.
Yes, yes. And this is something we have to live with all the time.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't be just asking all these questions, although I do have many, but I think we should allow the opportunity for the audience to ask Mounia and Yumna questions about the film, and also maybe to say what you feel about the film. So if you do have any questions, please raise your hand, and then my colleague will pass you the microphone. Okay, anyone has any questions for, yes, I think that gentleman up there.
Hi, thank you very much for the film. I remember watching Submarine a few years ago in IVA Awards, and it's the first time I remember watching something from Lebanon. So this film, again, it's pretty different from the last one I watched. And I just want to ask, how was it very difficult to prepare the sets and the production, and how long have you been preparing for the actual shooting? And the other question I want to ask is whether the film was released in Lebanon. Like, has anyone watched it in the country? Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and thank you for. I'm very happy to hear that Submarine is the first Lebanese film you've watched. It's very nice. I think so jumping from short film to feature is I think I realize how much of a like big I mean, making a feature film is overwhelming in many ways, but at the same time, the team that made it happen just made us feel that we were just making a longer short. And so, of course, logistically it was more complicated, but the team was better prepared. And in terms of, for example, in Submarine, there was no visual effects because the shot of the garbage was a real shot in a real street. But in Costa Brava, we actually shot in a green mountain. And then the VFX team restitched garbage shots from a real landfill that we shot into this. So most of the garbage you see in the film is made through the VFX team from Denmark and France, Peter Yort and Buff and Mikros, who worked like with a lot of care on this film because they really found a way to create a set through VFX that felt very real. Some people don't know that there's VFX in the film. And in terms of the production design made by Isa and Dil, Beatrice Harab, who did the costumes, Hanadi Midlich, and Thomas Bremer in the art direction, their challenge was to create the perfect home and create a home that anyone would want to live in, a home that's about self-sustainability, about poetry, about different layers of time. You know, there's a space that belongs to the child, the space that belongs to the mother. There's on the couch, there's the blanket of the grandfather, a home that feels like it has a story, and slowly destroy that home through the invasion of the garbage, because this warm home becomes grayer and bluer and more like the landfill encroaches and suffocates the characters. So a lot of work was done with the production design and VFX team to be able to do that. And it was very challenging, but everyone's talent was really, everyone worked with their heart and soul. And we haven't premiered in Lebanon yet. And so, but I've been touring festivals with the film, and a lot of Lebanese expats, because a lot of Lebanese people have left as well the country, have been responding to it with a very open heart. And it's been very heartwarming to see how and why different Lebanese people relate to the film. a lot of them in London, for example, felt that they were Alia, and they had the guilt that was tied to being an expat. But at the same time, Alia maybe loves Lebanon more than anyone in the movie, and that's why she had to cut ties with it so much. And so it's been interesting to see why different people react to the film, because every audience member gives a new meaning to your movie with their own interpretation of it, and therefore allows you to tell yourself, oh, maybe that was a subconscious reason why I told the story also.
Okay, so any other questions for Mounia and Yumna? Anyone? Just raise your hand, and then my colleague will pass you the microphone again at the lady on the second row.
Hello, thank you so much for chatting with us about the film. I have a question about the ending. So Mounia, I wonder, like for the ending, Reem and the father, drove and they were, smiling and like heading somewhere. So I was wondering, I'm curious to know what's your interpretation of the ending? Like, did they end up going to Beirut? What is it? Yeah, what's your interpretation? Thank you.
I think emotionally, what was important for me is to give the final decision to Reem. I think Reem is a kind of character who is the source of wonder and magic in this film, and spends most of her time trying to control things and keep her home and her family together. And it's her way to deal with the anxiety she's inherited from her father as well. I think Reem realizes maybe at the end of this film that maybe what she's protecting is the wrong thing, and maybe it's time for her to discover the world that she's been avoiding to look at and been protected from. Reem decides that she wants to go and see what she doesn't know, even if it might be something that will hurt her or not. She wants to free herself from what she's inherited from her parents' generation and try to trace her own path. And I think that Reem knows that her father will never get out of his own mind and will never leave the house if she doesn't ask him. That's how tight they are. So for me, the ending is about Reem helping her father change and wanting to go listen to her mother, who she has not been listening to or looking at for a while. And it's Reem deciding to bring her family back together and bring her father to terms with his trauma. I don't know if they will stay, if they will leave, but for me, it's about Reem going to Beirut to see the reality she hasn't seen all of her life. And through that, bringing her family together, even if it doesn't mean the parents will remain a couple, because that I don't know.
Mounia, do you think that actually Reem would be part of a next generation of activists or protesters who could bring change to the country? I mean, would that be something that you would hope Reem would do, or maybe Tala would do even?
I think I really, of course, it's what's great about I think what I love about Tala and Reem is that even though they're romantics and they're very empathetic and they're very brave, they don't have, they are not, their idealism is not completely irrational. And I think that my dream is that these two girls somehow find a way to see how they can contribute to change in their own new way that is not one that represents another generation than them.
Okay, so I'm sure the audience would have lots of other questions to ask, but sadly, I think we are running out of time. But maybe we'll see whether there. Okay, we can still have. We do still have time for one more question. That lady over there.
Thank you so much for the film. I think it's very a good topic for many governments in many countries. And if I was the house owner, I also don't know what to do because the house is so beautiful and all the stuff inside the house is so beautiful. And I don't think anyone will buy their house, and they cannot just live like that. and what to do if they don't have any more money to move, and who is responsible to their loss. It's really very big dilemma. They don't have a choice because the air already polluted, the smell, the water, whatever. This is their life, and not only their living. So I hope all the government in each country should watch this. And also, I think this is also one of big problem in most developed countries. I hope you continue to work on this and make many people to wake up, because to live in the jungle or to live on mountains, actually it is also one of my dreams, but it's very difficult. Yeah, but anyway, thank you. So please think more about this continuously. Thank you.
There's just one question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for a great movie. I was thinking about the point that you raised earlier about Rim and how she has this anxiety inherited from her parents, from the social issues that they went through. And I'm wondering whether you can speak a little bit to intergenerational trauma, especially those experienced by the Lebanese diaspora in other countries. I imagine like there's a lot of baggage emotionally, socially, politically that is brought out of Lebanon when people move abroad, that is experienced by the second generation. I'm wondering like if you can speak to how you see that manifest, and what role it plays in I guess like the political struggle for Lebanon, both internally but also internationally.
I was born in 1989, which is when the war ended. And so, and when my mother gave birth to me, the hospital was being bombed. So she had to give birth in the hallway. And she created a parallel between the end of a certain phase and my birth, because of course she's a mother. But this to say that, of course, we're all born with a certain memory of something, and we all carry within us what the generations above us have given us. And I think that I was born at a time where the first years of my life at home, I knew that I was living a calmer phase, but I knew that I had inherited the trauma of my parents. And I felt it even more when they didn't speak about it, when I felt like it was something that they didn't want to speak out loud. Their silence was so deafening that I felt that I inherited something without completely understanding it. And through reading books and watching movies, I created, and through school, I created a certain image of what they had gone through. But then on the day of the explosion, I was there in Beirut, and I feel like what happened to me on that day is everything was externalized. Everything that I had internalized became very, very visceral and very emotional. And somehow I felt a new form of connection with my parents at that moment. And that's when we started having more conversations about so many things, especially that on the day of the explosion, my mother saved me and a couple of friends from getting stuck. And I saw like the tools she had, like she was almost like she was a hero on that day. And I think that this intergenerational conversation that is happening, and the fact that we have understood what we've inherited, and the fact that the history of the country keeps repeating itself, is something fascinating and also overwhelming. I'll let you want to.
Yeah, I think for our generation, so also I was born in 92, which is 2 years after the war. So our parents lived a 15-year civil war. So they really grew up inside of this monster. And then they gave birth to us and the war ended. And I think all of the ways that they raised us, they put so much of what they wanted or what they had lost into us. So it was, in our case, intergenerational trauma was like you could see it. it was very, very clear. And it takes a lot of time to grow up and then start identifying the things that your parents used to do or used to say. Like there are ways that they might act that are very warlike, and you always have to tell them, like, we are in 2021, there's no war. You know, when you start identifying those things, you also start freeing yourself of being in that trauma, you know.
Okay. And I think this trauma and also the different ways different generations react to that is very well manifested in Costa Brava, Lebanon, this very, very wonderful and impressive film. So shall we extend another round of applause to Mounia Akl and Yumna Mawan. Thank you so much, Mounia, Yumna, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Have a good night, a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hopefully we'll see you here in Hong Kong with your next film. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.